Ghost Deck, The Nightmare Voyage, Chapter 1, The Wake of Steel. From Whispers Between Worlds, uploading daily. Lay, sounds, wind howling, metal creaking, ocean swelling beneath. Before it was a cruise ship, the Mazi was a war machine. A black-plated predator of World War I, it tore through the Atlantic with cannons and torpedoes, leaving death in its wake. She went down in silence, forgotten at the bottom of the sea. But someone brought her back. A reclusive billionaire obsessed with death, and nostalgia hauled her wreckage from the ocean floor. He rebuilt her hull with gold, her decks with marble. He called her the Mazi, named after a dream his wife had the night she died. What the brochures don't say is the ship still remembers the war, and it still holds prisoners. Kevin Robertson stepped onto the main deck with a duffel over his shoulder. He was a tall, dark-skinned African-American man in his early 30s, cut beard, sharp fade, chain swinging, and his eyes tired behind his fitted Sixers cap. He scanned the crowd, then glanced behind him. His wife, Kelly, known as Keezy, walked a few steps back, sunglasses on, lips tight, wearing a matching two-piece and gold sandals. She was African-American too, with cocoa-toned skin and long knotless braids twisted into a high bun. They didn't look like a couple on vacation. They looked like two people trying not to break. "If this don't fix us," Keezy muttered. "It will," K-Rob said, but even he didn't sound convinced. They kept walking. On the lower decks, the casino buzzed with pre-launch tension. Santana adjusted his collar in the mirror. He was African-American, lean, smooth-skinned, gold tooth flashing when he grinned, and his fade was so fresh you could still smell the clippers. His uniform vest hugged his frame tight. "Man, I ain't here to work. I'm here to win." "You here to get fired," muttered Icy, the older dealer setting up the chips. Locks pulled back, eyes always watching. Thingerial named Link Jr. dropped his bag and dabbed up his boy Nick. "Y'all ain't even say thank you for the rooms. Got Pops hooked up, got Nick a balcony, whole crew set." "How you even pull that?" Nick asked. "Michael's owe me," Thingy grinned. "You don't question a blessing." A few decks above, Mulan hit the lobby like she owned it. Philly native, light brown skin, glossy curls flowing, designer shades, baby hairs laid like lace. She ran a salon back home and treated this cruise like a soft launch for world domination. "We didn't fly out here to find love," she told her girls. "We here to cause problems." Melissa, her cousin, wore a sundress and a smile that said trouble. And Dewena, thick, dark skin, braided up, married with kids, but acting like none of that existed at sea. "I'm not me on this water," Dewena said, tucking her wedding ring into her purse. "Girl, you gon' drown in drama," Melissa laughed. "Let me swim then." And then came Frankie. He stood on the top deck, leaned against the railing, arms crossed, white with salt and pepper scruff, late 40s, quiet eyes that looked like they'd seen more than they ever said. Beside him sat his dogamut named Kilo, one eye gone, a back leg in a brace, but loyal. Frankie didn't smile. He just stared at the water. Kilo let out a low growl. Frankie didn't look down. "You feel it too?" he whispered. The dog whined. Something passed through Frankie, a cold breath, a ripple beneath his skin. "Yeah, they're still here." The horn of the Mazi groaned deep, and long as she pulled away from the dock, some passengers cheered, others waved goodbye. A few, like Frankie, said nothing at all. Down in cabin 213, a faint red glow blinked inside the wall, like an eye opening behind steel. No one saw it, but Kilo felt it, and Frankie knew. That night, Santana worked the table like a magician. The chips, the charm, it all came easy. Dewena slid into his game in a red dress and a wicked smile. "You dealing cards or flirting?" "What if I'm good at both?" Santana replied. Melissa shook her head at the bar. Mulan was already 3 drinks in and dancing. Keezy couldn't sleep. K-Rob snored beside her, dead to the world. She stepped out barefoot and wandered the hallway. And there, at the far end, she saw her. A little girl, dripping wet, white dress, hair down over her face, facing the wall. "Hey, are you okay?" The girl turned, eyes pitch black, face cracked like a shattered mask. Keezy gasped. The lights blinked, and the hallway emptied. She woke in her bed, but something stayed with her. A chill, a name, a warning. And on the top deck, Frankie sat with Kilo beside him, eyes closed, whispering into the wind. "They've started." Chapter 2, The Ship That Dreams. Sounds, soft ship creaks, subtle wind whistling through narrow halls, and low rhythmic breathing. The Mazi didn't sleep, even when its passengers did. The walls stretched at night just slightly. The floors groaned like they remembered something. Something heavy, something soaked in oil, blood, and salt. Up in their suite, Keezy shot up in bed, gasping. Her chest was damp with sweat. Her hands trembled. It wasn't just a nightmare, it was her nightmare. The little girl in the hallway, she'd been in it again. But this time, they were face to face. The child had whispered something she couldn't remember, but the feeling it left behind clung to her spine like ice. K-Rob turned in his sleep, oblivious. Keezy slid out of bed and tiptoed to the balcony, staring out into the Black Sea. She didn't realize it yet, but the girl was only the beginning. Down on deck 2, Nick was wide awake. He couldn't stop thinking about what he'd seen earlier. That red blinking light in the staff corridor near the boiler room, it wasn't blinking anymore. It was glowing solid. "Ain't nobody gonna believe me," he mumbled. Thingy had passed out back in the room, snoring with a slice of pizza still in his hand. So Nick decided to go look again. Phone flashlight on. Quiet steps. But when he turned the final corner, the panel was gone. Just cold steel. He stepped forward and the temperature dropped. The air thickened. Something passed behind him. He turned fast. Nothing. But he didn't see the shape, watching from the vent above. Back at the casino, Santana was still holding court. Dewena sat across from him again, sipping slow, making him sweat. Her lipstick matched her dress, and her eyes danced like sin. "You ain't scared of ghosts on this ship?" she asked, half joking. "Ghosts?" Santana leaned back. "Only thing haunting me is you." She smirked. "Careful, I might kill you." Mulan was stumbling back to her room when she saw it. At the end of the hallway, a figure. Tall, slender, head tilted sideways like it was listening for something. She blinked, and it was gone. "Man, I need water," she muttered, fumbling with her key card. On the top deck, Frankie stood still, as a statue. Kilo sat beside him, alert, ears twitching. Then the dog growled. Frankie's fingers twitched, then pointed south. He knew it. "Another one broke free," he whispered. Meanwhile, in a forgotten corridor near deck 3, Nick stumbled upon a door that wasn't there yesterday. It was metal, rusted, with a strange symbol etched into it, a circle of jagged triangles, like teeth. He reached out. "Don't touch it." Nick spun around. No one there, but the voice echoed again. "Don't look it in the eye." The door clicked and opened. Inside was only darkness, and a smile, floating. Nick screamed. Keezy woke up again, this time really waking out of breath and soaked in cold sweat. But her feet were wet. She looked down. The carpet under her bed was soaked in salt water, and in her palm, she clutched a shard of glass. On the top deck, Frankie watched the moon ripple. He whispered into Kilo's ear, "We have to find her, before the next one finds them." Chapter 3, Broken Seal. The Mazi drifted through calm waters like a sleeping beast, but calm wasn't peace, not anymore. Down in the belly of the ship, near the old boiler room, the air had grown colder. No one noticed the frost creeping along the pipes. No one heard the quiet grinding sound as rusted metal shifted and something ancient yawned. Frankie moved through the ship like a ghost himself. He wore a black windbreaker and old boots, the soles worn thin from years of walking places he shouldn't be. Kilo, his dog, limped beside him, his back leg braced with titanium, one eye cloudy, but locked in on something invisible. They reached a door near maintenance block C. No guests were supposed to be down here. Frankie paused. Kilo growled. "It's close," Frankie said. The door had a red smear across it, not paint. The moment his hand touched the knob, the wall beside him exhaled. Cold and loud, the lights overhead flickered. Kilo whimpered but didn't run. Frankie opened the door. Inside was black, but not empty. Keezy stared at her soaked carpet. She hadn't spilled anything. No leaks, no water bottle tipped over. The moisture smelled like sea brine, like deep ocean rot. She dropped the glass shard she found in her bed. It hit the floor and didn't bounce. It sank right into the carpet like the floor had turned into water. She backed away. "K-Rob," she called. "Wake up." He didn't stir. Keezy reached for him, then stopped. He was cold. Not dead, but like he'd been outside in winter. His eyes snapped open. Black, Not his eyes, just black. He blinked once and they returned to normal. What, he said? Nothing, Keezy whispered, stepping back. Nothing at all. On deck 3, Thingy was banging on Nick's door. Yo, wake up, man. I just saw the camera feed. You weren't in your room all night. No answer. He swiped his staff key. The room was empty. Bed untouched. No signs of struggle. But the bathroom mirror had words smeared across it in red. Don't sleep. Don't blink. Don't look. Back at the casino, Santana had just finished another hand when he felt it. The chill. It started at his fingers, climbed up his arm like something cold and wet had just touched him. He looked over his shoulder. No one there. But in the corner of the ceiling, a shadow peeled away from the wall. He blinked and it vanished. I need a drink, he muttered, tossing his apron on the chair. Frankie stood in the dark room, breathing slow. Kilo stayed near the door. A sound echoed soft and wet, like water dripping on old rope. Then a voice. Frankie. He froze. The voice wasn't in the room. It was inside his head. You hearing it too, boy? He asked. Kilo whined. Frankie knelt, placing one hand on the floor. The floor hummed. Thump, thump, thump. A heartbeat. He stood up fast. One of them got out. Meanwhile, Keezy returned to the hallway where she first saw the girl. Nothing was there, but the air was still heavy, thicker. She walked slowly, barefoot again. Then she saw it. The same girl, facing away, dripping wet, standing just inches from a guest room door. Keezy didn't speak this time. She stepped backward, slowly, but the girl turned anyway. This time, she wasn't alone. There were others. Faces torn, mouths sewn shut, eyes black and blinking in unison. Keezy ran. At the same time, Frankie exited the lower deck and passed a crew member. The man smiled, but his eyes were hollow. Frankie whispered to Kilo, "They're not hiding anymore." Above them all, in cabin 213, the wall cracked. The red pulse turned solid white. The seal broke, and the thing inside smiled for the first time in decades. Chapter 4, When Dreams Start to Bleed. Keezy locked the door behind her. She'd never run so fast in her life. Barefoot or not, her lungs burned, her knees shook, and she knew deep down that this ship was no longer just a cruise. It was a coffin, and it was filling up. She checked the lock again, even though she heard nothing on the other side of the door. The little girl, those other figures, they hadn't chased her. They didn't have to. They wanted her afraid. K-Rob sat on the bed, scrolling through his phone like nothing happened. "Yo," he said, "why you pacing like that?" Keezy turned. He looked fine now, normal, but the memory was sharp, those black eyes, his freezing skin. "You ain't feel nothing last night?" she asked. "Besides you leaving the bed and tripping around the ship at 3 a.m.? Nah." She didn't answer. She didn't trust what she saw, but she trusted what she felt. Something was watching them, something wanted in. Frankie was already 3 decks below. He walked like a man on a mission, fast but silent. Kilo stayed tight at his heel, one bad leg clicking softly on the tile. They passed a fire hose cabinet. The glass was frosted over from the inside. Frankie stopped, leaned in. The reflection showed nothing behind him. Not him, not Kilo, just a hallway full of ghosts. They blinked and vanished. "It's spreading," he whispered. "They're not confined anymore." Dewena stood on the pool deck in a robe and flip-flops, sipping cold champagne at sunrise. The ship was too quiet. Even with people around, it felt off. She watched her reflection ripple in the pool's surface, but her reflection didn't copy her. It moved its hand, slowly, deliberately. In the water, her reflection smiled. Dewena backed away and dropped her glass. "Nope, hell no." She turned to leave, but someone was standing behind her, tall, thin, face covered in bandages soaked through with seawater. Who the figure leaned toward her, no eyes, just 2 deep leaking holes where the socket should have been. Dewena screamed, but the deck was empty. Thingy was losing it. Nick was gone. The crew wouldn't listen. The staff said his room was never checked into. He replayed the hallway camera footage again. There it was. Nick walked down the corridor, stopped at the door with the rusted teeth symbol. Then, gone, like he stepped through a curtain made of air. Thingy pressed pause, zoomed in. A shadow moved in the corner, crawling on the wall, backwards, human-shaped, but not. "Nah," he said, "we leaving, we gotta go." He pulled out his phone and texted Link Sr. Meet me at the lifeboats. Bring everything. Frankie stood outside cabin 213 now. It was wide open. Inside, frost climbed the walls like mold. The floor was cracked. The bed was untouched. In the corner, a glowing square pulsed white hot. And beside it stood a woman in red, skin see-through, eyes glowing gold. Her hands were outstretched, palms open. Kilo didn't growl. He sat still. Frankie stepped forward. The ghost didn't move. Then she spoke. The others will come for them in their sleep. I know, Frankie said. One of them will open the veil. If they look, they die. I've been telling them, he said. They won't listen. She stepped closer. The air grew warm. There's one who can. She's already dreaming. The woman, Frankie said, Keezy. The ghost nodded. She's the key. Then she vanished in a burst of salt and light. Frankie wiped his face, jaw clenched. Now it begins. Keezy stood in the bathroom, gripping the sink. Her eyes were red from crying, her feet blistered. She turned on the faucet. Only blood came out. Chapter 5, What the Dead Remember. The blood in the sink was gone. No trace, no scent. Just cold porcelain and running water now, but Keezy had seen it. Thick, dark, pulsing out of the faucet like the ship itself was bleeding. She splashed her face anyway. You not crazy, she whispered to herself. You just trapped. Behind her, the mirror flickered, and for a split second, her reflection smiled with a different mouth. Down on deck 4, Frankie was moving fast. Kilo limped along, panting, alert. Every time they passed one of the glowing wall panels, the dog would let out a low growl. That meant a ghost was near. Frankie had counted 5 active cells now. Only 10 were ever built. 3 were supposed to hold good spirits. The rest? Murderers, sadists, soldiers that drowned in their own guilt. The worst one, leg amazing. Frankie had seen glimpses of him before: twisted limbs, long teeth, a crown of fingers, and he had a voice that didn't echo, it vibrated through your bones. If that one got out, no dream would be safe. Santana was staring at his cards, but not playing. He hadn't dealt a hand in 20 minutes. Every time he blinked, he saw something at the edge of the casino, something watching him. Not just a figure, a woman, long arms, twisted joints, a dancer's posture, but something was off. She stood there last night too. And the night before. I don't believe in ghosts, he muttered. I believe in math. But when Dewena came up behind him, he flinched hard enough to knock the deck across the table. You good? She asked. Nah, he said. I think I saw something. You ain't think? You did. She showed him her arm. Scratches, red and fresh. This ship ain't right. We gotta get out of here. Then stop dealing and start running. Melissa was in the elevator when it stopped on a floor that didn't exist. The screen said Deck 13. There was no Deck 13. Not on the maps. Not in the brochures. Not anywhere. The doors opened anyway. The hallway beyond was dark, flickering, and full of footsteps she couldn't see. She didn't step out, but something stepped in. The elevator door closed behind Heron. The lights turned red. She never screamed. Frankie reached the communications bay. It was supposed to be empty, but someone was already inside. Mulan, how you get in here? He asked. I followed the sound, she said. Something's been calling my name. Frankie looked around. All the monitors were off except one. It was showing live camera feeds from every hallway, and every hallway had a ghost in it, standing still, waiting. They're not chasing people, Mulan said. They're just watching. Frankie nodded. That's how they get in. Fear lets them through, but dreams? Dreams let them feed. In her room, Keezy finally broke down. She dropped to her knees, hands over her ears. The whispers were back, not outside, inside. Look at us. You're the dreamer. Open your eyes, Kelly. She screamed. Then, silence. A soft knock at her door. She opened it slowly. Kilo sat there, wagging his tail. And behind him, Frankie. We need to talk, he said, before your next dream kills you. Chapter 7, The Drowning Hall. The torch in Keezy's hand flickered but didn't fade. It radiated warmth, thrill, warmed hand. She could feel it pulsing against her palm like a heartbeat. Frankie leaned back against the wall, arms crossed, nodding slow. Good, you brought it back. I didn't think that was possible, Keezy whispered. That's because no one told you the truth. Dreams shape the rules. If they can kill you in your sleep, then you can kill them back. Kilo growled near the door, low, warning. Frankie turned toward the hall. We're not alone. On deck 3, Santana slammed the door shut behind him, chest heaving. Dewena and Melissa followed seconds later, hearts pounding. I told you, Dewena screamed. I told you that thing was not human. They had run from something tall and twitching, crawling on all fours across the ceiling of the spa, a face that turned inside out when it grinned. It never touched them, but it didn't have to. Its presence had cracked a glass panel just by breathing. Where the hell is Mulan? Melissa snapped. She said she was going back to the cabin last night, Santana replied. She never showed. They turned to the monitor on the wall. The security feed was still glitching, but for 1 second, a clean image flashed. Deck 13, a room with no number, Mulan standing in the center, surrounded by red handprints. Then static. Thingy and Link Sr. crept through the emergency corridor leading to the lifeboats. The hallway was warped. Steam hissed through cracked vents, and the floor wasn't dry anymore. It sloshed. Salt water, inches deep, but no one knew where it was coming from. You smell that? Thingy whispered. Yeah, Link Sr. said, like rust and blood. Then the lights went black. A moment later, only a soft blue glow lit the hallway. It was coming from a figure at the far end, floating, hair drifting like it was underwater, eyes glowing white. It opened its mouth, no words, just a sound like a siren screaming through bone. Link Sr. collapsed, convulsing. Thingy screamed. In the room with Keezy, Frankie pulled a small pouch from his coat. Inside, 4 rings, etched with symbols, older than language. He handed her one. This will keep you anchored. As long as you're wearing it in the dream, you can return. Keezy slipped it on. You said they're after dreamers. Are there others? There were. Not all of them made it out. And me? Why am I the one? Frankie met her eyes. Because you're not just dreaming, you're remembering. Keezy took a step back. Remembering what? What happened last time this ship set sail? Flash. A sudden image. A drowning hall. Keezy was in it. In water. Chained. Screaming as people above her danced. Flash. She gasped and staggered. Frankie caught her. They're starting to bleed through. It's not just dreams anymore. It's memory. Santana walked through the crew bar, calling out, Mulan, yo, where you at? He checked behind the bar. Nothing. Then he heard humming. Soft, childlike. It echoed from the ice room. He stepped closer. The door opened by itself. Inside was fog. Mulan's voice whispered from the mist. Santana, don't look at it. He turned and saw the mirror. Inside it, his own face, smiling. With its eyes, Frankie, Keezy, and Kilo stood outside cabin 213 again. The door opened before they knocked. Inside, the red square was pulsing again, but now there was something else. A heartbeat, not a sound but a pull. Keezy stepped inside, and the door slammed shut behind her. Chapter 8, Inside the Seal. The door slammed so hard behind Keezy, it echoed like a gunshot. She turned instantly, torch still flickering in her palm, but the handle wouldn't budge, not even a rattle. It was like the metal had fused with the wall. Frankie, she yelled, Kilo. No answer, just her breath, fast, uneven, and that sound low and steady like a massive heartbeat in the floor beneath her. Thump, thump. The red glow from the wall panel in cabin 213 was no longer a pulse, it was a solid beam, casting jagged shadows that twisted across the floor. Her bare feet crunched over what felt like broken glass, but when she looked down, it was just salt, piled like dust in every corner of the room. She raised the torch. The walls were warping, bending inward, as if the room itself was breathing around her. Outside, Frankie pressed his palm to the metal door. She's inside, he muttered. Kilo growled, ears pinned back. I know, boy. I didn't think it'd pull her this soon either. The air around them vibrated, and for the first time, Frankie looked scared. Below deck, Dewena, Santana, and Melissa ran through the spa corridor toward the back stairwell. The walls were covered in water now. It seeped through the cracks, pooled at their ankles. Why are the walls bleeding? Melissa shouted. That's not blood, Santana said, breathless. That's memory. They turned the corner and froze. A figure was standing in front of the stairwell, not moving, not breathing. It wore a ballroom mask, shattered porcelain with long, curling horn. The floor behind it drifted, not walk drifted. We going back, Santana said. No, Dewena said, jaw clenched. We finished this. I'm not dying like some scared extra in a horror movie. She stepped forward. The figure took one step toward her. Its mask cracked in the center and blood poured from the break. In cabin 213, Keezy's torch began to dim. She clutched it tighter. Number no, no, no. Don't you go out on me? And then the walls opened. Not a doorway, just a rip in space. Beyond it, water, an entire corridor filled with floating bodies. Some intact, some not. Keezy stepped forward and realized the bodies weren't dead. They were sleeping, and she recognized one. Mulan, trapped, suspended midair, eyes open, mouth bubbling behind a glass mask. Keezy reached for her and was pulled through. The dream hit her like a freight train. 1 second, she was in the ship. The next, she stood in a hall lit by candle-sold, flickering, lining rows of pews. It looked like a chapel, but the windows were cracked and bleeding salt water. At the altar stood a man, or what used to be one, leg amazing, crowned in arms, his body twisted, his smile stitched across his face like a zipper. He turned slowly. "Welcome back," he said, voice like wet iron dragging across tile. "Back?" Keezy whispered. "You were here the first time the ship died, and you'll be here when it does again." She raised her torch. He didn't flinch. Instead, he raised a hand and the torch flickered once, then vanished. Outside the sealed room, Frankie collapsed to one knee. "No," he gasped. "She's not ready." Kilo barked violently, tail between his legs. Frankie pulled out a chalk stick from his pocket and began to write on the floor circles, triangles, a symbol shaped like a maze. "I'm coming, Keezy," he whispered. "Hold on." Inside the dream, Leg Amazing stepped off the altar and walked toward her. With every step, the chapel cracked. Water poured in from the ceiling. "You are the last dreamer," he said, "and when you drown, the door will stay open." Keezy backed away until her foot caught something. She looked down, her torch, but it had changed. Now it was a blade, thin, sharp, flickering with light and memory. She picked it up. "You want me?" she said. "Then come get me." Chapter 9, The Blade of Memory. The dream world twisted around Keezy like water in a broken pipe surging, resisting cracking against itself. She stood in the chapel of shadows, blade in hand. It wasn't just a weapon. It was warm, familiar. It pulsed in her hand like it remembered someone. Leg Amazing stopped a few feet away. Up close, his face wasn't stitched, it was folded, skin wrapped like wet linen, thin hands twitching at his sides. His mouth never moved when he spoke. "You are not strong enough." "Try me," Keezy said. He raised a hand. The pews in the chapel, shattered wood, bone, ash, all lifted and hurled toward her like knives. Keezy lifted the blade, and the storm stopped. The blade expanded, glowing with light slicing through the attack like wind through paper. Leg Amazing shrieked, and the walls began to collapse. In the real world, Frankie gritted his teeth as he finished the sigil on the floor outside cabin 213. Kilo stood beside him, ears pinned, trembling. "Come on, Keezy, bring it back." The chalk circle hummed then flared with red. Frankie fell back as the door to the cabin swung open. The air inside was boiling cold. Keezy blinked. She was back, on the floor of cabin 213, coughing, soaked in sweat, but she still had the blade in her hand, still glowing. Frankie grabbed her by the shoulders. "You fought him?" She nodded, breathing hard. "He knew me, like we've done this before." Frankie looked down at her weapon. "Because you have." Elsewhere, Dewena gripped a towel rack in the spa bathroom and ripped it off the wall. Her other hand was bleeding, wrapped in gauze. Melissa was in the corner, muttering to herself, "We're not real. We're not real. We're not real." Santana splashed water on his face in the sink. "Mulan's gone, Link Jr. is gone, and we stuck in a floating house of nightmares." Dewena stood up. "Nah, we still breathing. That means we still choosing." The lights above them shattered every bulb and sink. And from the dark mirror behind Santana, something began to crawl out. Thingy was alone now. He had watched his father get dragged beneath the water in the lower decks. 1 second he was there next, just bubbles and a scream that didn't sound human. Thingy ran. Now he was in the crew passage near the theater, out of breath, gripping a kitchen knife. That's when he heard it, Nick's voice. "Yo, Thingy, bro, I'm here." Thingy turned around, eyes wide. Nick stood at the end of the hall. But his eyes were too wide, his grin was too stiff. Come on, bro. We can get out. Come with me. Thingy stepped back. You ain't Nick. Nick's smile faded, then died knowing no one's coming. Mulan blinked. She was underwater, floating but not drowning. Her wrists were bound, her body suspended in the flooded chapel. But something changed. A crack formed in the glass around her. Then another. Light filtered in from above. And she heard a voice. Keezy's M, calling her name. In cabin 213, Frankie helped Keezy to her feet. He'll come for you again, stronger next time. Then I'll hit harder, she said. Frankie nodded. We need the others, before this ship becomes his playground. Keezy looked at her reflection in the cracked mirror, but it didn't move with her. Her reflection just stared back and whispered, You already failed once. Don't do it again. The mirror shattered. Chapter 10, What Waits Below. The mirror shards fell in slow motion, scattering across the cabin floor like icy teeth. Keezy didn't move. She stared at the empty space where her reflection used to be. Did you hear it? She asked. Frankie stepped closer. I didn't have to. She turned to him. What did she mean I failed before? Frankie exhaled slow. Because this isn't the first time this ship has crossed into the dream layer. The last time it did, there was someone just like you, a dreamer. She tried to close the seals. She died before she could. What happened to her? Keezy asked. Frankie looked her in the eyes. You or her? Keezy blinked. Her body froze before her voice could catch up. No, I'd remember. No one remembers the first time, not until it's too late. Thingy ran until his lungs gave out. He slammed the emergency stairwell door behind him, dropping to his knees. His shirt was soaked, not with sweat, with salt water. There was no water on that level, only ghosts. He looked down at his phony no signal. No time. The clock just blinked. 3:33 a.m. in red over and over. He tried to call Link Sr. The voicemail echoed back a voice that wasn't his father's. He drowned before the seal broke. You're next. Thingy smashed the phone. Nah, I ain't going out like that. He picked up a fire axe from the stairwell wall and kept moving. Santana and Dewinna were trapped inside a hallway of mirrors near the ballroom. No matter which way they turned it, all looked the same. Is this a dream? Santana asked. Dewinna touched the wall. It was real. Cold, wet, number. This is in between. We crossed over. She turned a corner and saw herself. Not a reflection. A version of herself. Eyes missing. Teeth filed. Skin covered in inked messages. Is that me? She whispered. I hope not, Santana said. Her double raised a hand and pointed at the ceiling. Above them, a panel in the ceiling creaked open and seawater began to pour through. Mulan was still floating, but she wasn't alone. The chapel beneath the ship had filled with more dreamers. People frozen in sleep, eyes open but blank, all tied to the ceiling by seaweed cords. But one figure stirred. A girl. Young, wet dress, black eyes. The same one Keezy saw in the hallway. The girl looked at Mulan and whispered through the water, She's trying again. A crack split across Mulan's glass cage. Back in cabin 213, Keezy held the torch blade again. It flickered, then it flared brighter than before. If this is the second time, she said, then I want to know what I did wrong. Frankie nodded. Then we go to the source. Where? The deepest part of the ship, below the dream line, below the engine room. Keezy's eyes narrowed. The catacombs. Frankie said nothing, just opened the hidden panel in the floor and began to descend. Below deck 0, there was no light, only red glow and voices that didn't echo. As Frankie and Keezy climbed down the metal rungs, they passed writing scratched into the steel. Keezy read it out loud. Only the guilty sleep. That wasn't here before, Frankie said. Then who wrote it? Someone who remembered too late. At the base of the shaft, they stepped into a chamber. Round, silent. In the center, a massive iron door, sealed shut with chains and glowing runes. Keezy stepped closer. Her torch dimmed, and from the other side of the door, she heard her own voice whisper, Help me. Chapter 13, Wake the Dead. The moment Keezy stepped from the light chamber, the air shifted. The corridor of the collective dream world trembled beneath her feet. Behind her, the three good ghosts watched silently, their forms flickering like candlelight in a storm. Ahead, the dream bled into something else, merging of memory and madness. She gripped the torch blade, now infused with their power. Its glow pulsed with her heartbeat. The altar's at the core, one of the ghosts had told her. If you reach it, you can wake the dead, but they won't all want to be saved. She walked forward, and the world began to shift. Back on the Mazi, Frankie stood at the center of a chalk sigil in the ballroom, sweat dripping down his face as the walls around him pulsed like veins. Kilo growled at the shadows, licking the ceiling. "She's close," Frankie muttered. "Hold the seal, just a little longer." Suddenly, Dewena stumbled into the room, dragging a barely conscious Melissa behind her. "Help! She's not breathing." Frankie rushed over, placing his hand over Melissa's forehead. He closed his eyes. "She's caught in the dream net. She's not gone, but if Keezy fails, she dies," Dewena finished. "We all do." Deep in the collective dream, Keezy passed door after door, each glowing faintly. Some showed her memories. Some showed the memories of others, and some showed nothing but black void. Then she reached it, the altar, a twisted spire made of rusted steel and bone, rising out of the floor in a circular chamber of cracked tile. Surrounding it, ghosts, dozens, hundreds, all standing, watching. None moved. She stepped into the circle, and the blade in her hand vibrated. "What now?" she asked. Then he arrived, like amazing, but not like before. He was taller now, his arms longer, the finger crown fused to his head, pulsing, his mouth split down to his chest like a jacket zipper. He didn't speak with a voice. He pushed thoughts into her skull. Too late. Keezy raised the blade. "I made it. You're still dreaming." He lunged. She blocked. The blade screamed against his claws. They spun. Keezy ducked under a swipe, rolled across the floor, slashed upward, caught him in the side. Salt and shadow sprayed from the wound. He screamed. The ghost crowd shifted, restless. Keezy planted her feet. "You had your turn. Wake up." She drove the blade into the altar. On the ship, every light blew out at once. People screamed. Some jumped from decks. Some dropped where they stood. Then, boom. A pulse of light exploded from the ballroom. Frankie dropped to one knee. Melissa gasped and sat up, coughing. Dewena sobbed with relief. And somewhere, across the ship, doors began to unlock. Inside the dream, Leg Amazing stumbled back, shrieking as the altar cracked down the middle. Ghosts began to vanish, pop like soap bubbles. Keezy glowed now, her feet lifted an inch from the ground. The collective dream began to collapse. She turned to run, and saw herself again. The first Keezy, still broken, still watching. "Are you ready this time?" the broken one asked. "I don't have a choice." "Good answer." She reached out and touched Keezy's arm. They merged. The blade flared, and Keezy woke up. Back in the real world, she jolted upright in the catacombs. Frankie was beside her. "Did you do it?" She nodded, slowly. "I woke them." "Then what's next?" She looked down the hallway. The ship was silent. Then, a voice echoed through the vents. "All passengers, please report to the Grand Hall. Dinner will be served shortly." But the voice? It wasn't human. It was Leg Amazing's Blank Athier. And he was still here. Chapter 14, Dinner is Served. The speakers crackled again, louder this time, piping through every corridor of the Mazi. "All passengers, please report to the Grand Hall." Keezy's breath hitched. Frankie stood up, eyes narrowed. "That wasn't just an echo," he muttered. "He's trying to draw us in." "Why the Grand Hall?" Keezy asked, standing slowly. "Because it was the first room touched by him, the first place he killed." Meanwhile, Dewena and Melissa limped through the hallway toward the Grand Hall entrance. Melissa was pale, still clutching her head, but awake now. "You sure you heard Keezy's voice?" Dewena asked. "Not hers," Melissa whispered. "A version of hers." They turned a corner and froze. The Grand Hall doors were open. Inside, candles were lit on every table. The long banquet table at the center was fully set silver platters, dripping roasts, chalices filled with red wine. At the head, Leg Amazing, wearing a torn tuxedo, face partially melted, eyes glowing. He stood and raised a glass. "You came just in time for the feast." Thingy stumbled into the casino floor, axe in hand, bleeding from his arm. The slot machines were flashing random symbol skulls, chains, a single eye. He found Icy there, alive, crouched behind a bar counter with a shattered bottle in hand. "You made it?" Thingy asked. "Barely," Icy muttered. "They took Link Sr. They got Nick too." A silence passed between them. Then the speakers above their heads flared again. "Come eat or be eaten." They looked at each other. "We going to dinner?" Icy asked. Thingy nodded, wiping blood from his mouth. "Yeah, we crashing the whole damn buffet." Up on the top deck, K-Rob stood alone. He hadn't seen Keezy in hours. He held a flare gun, shaking. Behind him, the pool was filled with black water, and something was rising from it. At first, he thought it was a person. Then he saw the uniform. The captain, no face, just shadow. The ghost stepped onto the deck dripping, still wearing the captain's hat. "You abandoned her once," it whispered. K-Rob fired. The flare passed right through. The ghost grinned and vanished. Keezy and Frankie reached the grand hall entrance. They stopped just outside the open doors. From where they stood, they could see everyone seated. Santana, Dewena, Melissa, even Thingy and Icy, walking through the other entrance. But their faces, emotionless, trapped. "They're caught in it," Frankie said. "A feeding illusion. If they eat, they die in their sleep." Keezy looked down at the blade. Its glow had faded. "How do I break it?" "You take his seat." She blinked. "Excuse me?" "It's not just about killing him," Frankie explained. "It's about replacing him." "You saying I gotta become the captain?" Frankie nodded. "Rule the dream or be consumed by it." Keezy stepped forward. The carpet squished beneath her boots. Leg Amazing turned. He smiled. "There she is, the girl who never learned." Keezy approached the head of the table. "I didn't come to eat." "Then why are you here?" "To take my seat." She swung the blade. Chapter 15. The head of the table. The blade slashed through candlelight, hissing with energy as it cleaved through the ghostly fog in the grand hall. Leg Amazing didn't dodge. He absorbed it. The blade buried into his chest, and for a moment, time froze. Every candle flickered out. Every plate of food rotted instantly. The guests, Keezy's friends, the blackjack dealers, even Dewena witched, like mannequins, frozen in half-breaths. Leg Amazing smiled, even with the blade still glowing inside him. "You think this ends with a seat?" He grabbed the hilt and pulled it deeper. "This ship has no anchor, only passengers." Keezy stepped back, eyes wide. The blade disintegrated into dust in his hands. "Then I guess I'm the storm." Frankie stood outside the grand hall, tracing chalk sigils into the carpet. His voice was low, muttering incantations. "Bind the breath, seal the dream, protect the one who walks between." Kilo sat beside him, ears pinned, growling at the door. From inside, the lights flared blood red. "Come on, Keezy," Frankie muttered. "Take the crown." Leg Amazing reached out, and the table extended unnaturally long toward Keezy's silverware and glassware flying like daggers. She ducked behind a fallen chair and sprinted for the dais. As she ran, her friends remained frozen. Santana mid-laugh, Icy holding a fork inches from his mouth, Dewena's hand clutching a wine glass filled with shadows. Keezy reached the head of the table. The captain's chair sat empty, wrapped in chains. She reached for it, and the chains snapped open on their own. "If I sit," she whispered, "I'm not leaving the same." "Then don't," Leg Amazing hissed behind her. "Let me show you eternity." She looked down at the chair, then at him. "I'd rather burn the throne than wear your crown." Keezy grabbed the broken end of her blade's hilt, still glowing faintly, and jammed it into the seat. The chair erupted in light. The grand hall trembled. Outside, Frankie was thrown off his feet as the sigils he'd drawn ignited. Kilo barked madly. The ship's hull groaned like a dying whale, and all the ghostly energy rushed toward the grand hall. Inside, the possessed feast began to melt. The illusion shattered. The guests blinked. Dewena coughed. Melissa dropped her glass. Icy shouted out loud. Thingy stood, axe ready. "What the hell?" Keezy stood atop the smoldering captain's chair. Leg Amazing screamed louder than thunder. His body began to break apart, piece by piece, crumbling into dust. "You can't kill the dream," he howled. Keezy didn't respond. She raised her hand. The dust swirled around her and entered her chest. Everyone screamed. Frankie burst through the doors just as she collapsed. Moments passed. Then Keezy opened her eyes. They glowed faint gold. Frankie rushed forward. "Keezy?" She stood, slowly. "He's gone. You sure?" She nodded, but the way her voice echoed, it wasn't just hers anymore. Above deck, the moon shifted. A gust of wind howled through the mast. And below deck, something behind the sealed iron door laughed softly. Chapter 16, Crown of Salt. Keezy stood at the head of the grand hall, body trembling from what just passed through her. The dust of Leg Amazing still glimmered faintly in the air, vanishing into her bloodstream, her lungs, her thoughts. Everyone stared. Dewena rose first, still clutching Melissa's arm. Keezy? Keezy turned. Her eyes flickered gold, then normal again. I'm okay. But even she didn't believe that. Frankie took a cautious step forward, Kilo at his heel. What did he leave behind? Keezy swallowed hard. Her voice was distant. Memories, whispers. I can feel the dream, waiting. Like he didn't really die, just went deeper. She looked around at the ruined grand hall. But I've got the wheel now. In the casino, the lights stabilized. Slot machines shut off. The haunted bells finally went silent. Thingy leaned against the blackjack table, letting the axe fall from his hand. Icy stared out the window at the dark ocean. Did we win? He asked. I don't know, Thingy muttered. But if we did, it don't feel like it. Up on the pool deck, K-Rob stumbled out from behind the wet bar, flare gun still clutched in hand. He was pale, drenched in sweat. Keezy's voice echoed inside his head now. A whisper. Not words, just her presence. He fell to his knees. What are you becoming, baby? The survivors met in the ballroom an hour later. Frankie stood beside Keezy, drawing new chalk circles. Mulan arrived, hair wet from wherever she'd escaped. Santana limped in, one arm wrapped in a towel, blood soaked through. Dewena, Melissa, Thingy, and Icy sat together, silent. No one had much to say. Keezy finally broke it. We lost too many. She looked at the faces not there. Link, Jr., Nick, Link Sr. Dewena's tears slipped out silently. Keezy stared at the ballroom chandelier swaying gently above. There's still something below, she said. You felt it too? Frankie asked. Yeah, even after he left. There's a deeper room, one I haven't seen. Mulan stepped forward. Then let's go down and finish it. Keezy shook her head. Number. If we go now, we're walking in blind. We need to know what it is. I need to remember more. Frankie pulled a slip of paper from his coat. A floor plan, one no one else had seen. He spread it across the ballroom floor. There's a sealed chamber beneath the waterline, lower than the catacombs, labeled Section Null. No doors, no stairs, only one way in. He pointed to the captain's quarters, through the captain's mirror. At that exact moment, in the captain's cabin at the front of the ship, the mirror pulsed once. A black hand pressed against the inside of the glass. Not Leg Amazing. Someone else. Older. Worse. Waiting. Back in the ballroom, Kilo suddenly growled. Everyone looked toward the door. Frankie stood. We're not alone. From the hallway, soft footsteps echoed. Then a voice. Male. Gentle. I brought help. It was Frankie's brother, but he'd been dead for years. Behind him were more faces. Familiar. Lost. Returned. Keezy stepped forward slowly. What is this? The man grinned. It's not over. The ghosts are waking. The ship is shifting, and what sleeps beneath the Mazi is older than death itself. Beat. Slight swell of orchestral tension. They survived the first night, but surviving the dream is something else entirely. Music fades into a heartbeat, then silence. Text on screen fades in over a foggy ocean backdrop. To be continued in part 2. Ghost Deck, The Nightmare Voyage. Autobook vertical bar, whispers between worlds.